Hi everyone. This is what happened to me when I got government housing part 24, and I've been having some problems with my voice, so hopefully I won't sound too weird in this recording. I want to continue telling you about what happened and all the incidents, but I have to take a detour because of something that happened recently. When I've been going through this series, I've been telling you about my treatment by the police and that I didn't have a lawyer and that the behaviour of the respondent's lawyer was very bad, and so on. But I've also wanted to talk about general ways in which I've had problems with the public service. So I'm not saying that I have a problem with the public service itself per se in general, but I have had problems with some people who work in the public service, and because of what has happened to me recently, that has given me the opportunity to tell you about my experiences with the public service. And even though I put a disclaimer on my videos, I don't want to cross any legal lines, so I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible, which is very hard given what has happened to me and the way that I've been treated. So I have to depart from my story about my application for compensation and tell you what happened. On the 28th of the 9th, 22, so as we know, that was actually just last week, I got a call from someone who works at the Department of Housing, and they told me that they wanted me to remove rubbish, which is on the nature strip of the block that I live in. And I didn't put it there, and they didn't provide me with any evidence that I put it there, or even any evidence of their allegation that I put it there. And even though I repeatedly asked them to prove why they thought it was me, but they kept telling me that I had to remove the rubbish in a phone call that went on for over 15 minutes. I don't know why the rubbish was removed from the rubbish area to the nature strip, but what generally happens is that people who are employed by the department move the rubbish onto the nature strip, and then someone else comes along with a truck and they remove it. So I thought that it was actually the department who organised for it to be moved from, our rubbish area to the nature strip in the first place. And obviously it never occurred to me that someone would ring me up and tell me that I had to pay for the removal. So I'll play you a recording which is part of what was said to me.
As I mentioned earlier, there is boxes with your name and your address, which is why I'm calling you. And as you are a tenant of public housing property, we request that you remove your rubbish from the nature strip.
Okay. All right.
And if you do not do it, yes, that is when we will charge you and do it ourselves, because it is not correct to have rubbish on a nature strip and disturb the property of others.
Okay. So can I just clarify?
So if you're wondering why I'm playing that recording, it's just because I've got so many instances where this sort of thing has happened, and I'm sick and tired of being burdened with trying to explain my side of the story, not just to people online, but to everyone else. Because if you can imagine, obviously if someone accuses me of doing something, I'm going to respond. And obviously if they keep accusing me of it, I have to complain. And if I was successfully fined, it may end up in court. So unfortunately, I'm between a rock and a hard place, and I'm in a situation where if I do record things, I get questioned for that. And if I don't record them, then people call me a liar. So I'm sick of being called a liar. And not just that, but I'm sick of people not doing things by the book and expecting to intimidate, other people into doing things. And my experience in court was pretty bad. And I was constantly told that I needed to provide evidence of things. And yet I constantly find myself dealing with public servants who won't put things in writing, so they say things to you which cause, a huge amount of distress. And if you don't have it in writing, you can't prove it, and you're expected to go to court and defend yourself with that hanging over your head and with that in your heart. It's very hard to deal with. But anyway, as you can hear, I was told that I would be charged if the department had the rubbish removed, which I think would be unfair, obviously, given that they had no evidence that I put it there. Also, the other thing is that there's 8 units in the block. So I don't know how they came to the conclusion that I was the one who was responsible for all of that rubbish. If I had rubbish in the bin and someone moved it, I don't think I should be responsible. And I don't know, like, how I could be picked as the person who's being responsible. This is something that I think should have been explained to me, in a letter, just out of fairness, just so I could get my head around it, because this wasn't something that I was expecting. And the other thing is that these people have a habit of catching you off guard. Like, I've put some other videos online about people, from the department turning up at my home wanting to come in, and me not understanding why they're there and why they want to come in. And, because it's not because I can't understand the concept, but because it's out of the blue. And as you can see from this picture, there's a lot of hard rubbish there. So it's not just household rubbish that I would produce myself. And I don't think that it would be physically possible for a woman of my size and my age to put that rubbish there anyway. And regardless of, the facts, which I try to argue to defend myself, I'm being threatened with being charged the removal fee if I don't remove the rubbish. So that puts me in an impossible situation. As a tenant in government housing, should I expect to be threatened with a fine for anything? If they are allowed to fine me, that would set a dangerous precedent. It would mean that anyone could be fined for anything without evidence, and especially if they cooperate. If you argue, you're put in one basket, which is bad, because they label you rude, which is unfortunate. And then if you cooperate, you're just allowing yourself to be walked over the top of and accused with doing things that you haven't done. The other thing is that she didn't put her threat in writing, so I was left with having to tell you guys what happened in an attempt to defend myself and to bring this matter into the realm of reality. Because, otherwise it's just going on in my head if I don't actually publish it. And that's pretty burdensome, and it's completely unfair. I've been threatened like this before, and I've had friends who've been threatened like this before, and that has had serious consequences for them. I don't think it's acceptable for public servants to ring people up and threaten them with fines, or to try to assert that a tenant has done something without providing evidence, or without explaining the allegation in writing to give the tenant, a fair opportunity to understand what the allegation is and to respond. I don't know why they're allowed to do that. I felt very taken aback, and to be honest, I didn't know what to say. At least if she had put her threat in writing, I would have been able to consider what she was saying, and then I could have done my best to cooperate, which I would like to do, obviously. Over the years that I've been living in government housing, I've noticed that some public servants trivialise issues that the tenants see as very important or very distressing. Obviously, the thought of being fined is distressing for me, but what's also distressing is the ease at which these people will pick up the phone and confront a tenant with an allegation and then threaten to charge them without evidence. Surely there must be some sort of protocol that they need to follow. And if there is, I don't know what it is because they're not forthcoming with that sort of information. When I was going through the justice system and dealing with the respondent, there were many examples of this sort of behaviour. And once again, I'm talking about the bad public servants, not about public servants in general. Their behaviour ranged from the bad behaviour, the range from outright threats and bullying, such as walking up to me and saying, "We're going to destroy you," or "I hope you've got a good lawyer, you're going to need one," because they maintained this fantasy that that I was making up what I was saying about the respondent. So the implication was that I would need a good lawyer in court because, you know, they would do something to me. But anyway, so the bullying behavior would range from those sorts of outright threats to the other end of the scale, which was bizarre instances where they would just march up to me and stare me in the face without talking. And if you look at that behavior, it looks like an intimidation technique, but I've had that happen to me a lot. I think that if someone thinks that they can communicate with you without speaking, that they should be sectioned under the Mental Health Act. You know, it's bizarre and it's infuriating when people do that. And also, if a public servant thinks that they can communicate with you by just staring at you, I think that that should be grounds for immediate dismissal. If anyone watching this video feels that they can explain that sort of behavior better than I have just then, please let me know, because people need to verbalize what's going on. There are finer details and different intimidation techniques that are being used against the general public, and I think people need to verbalize what's happening. I know that it's hard to verbalize this sort of strange behavior, but I'm hoping that if those of us who are on the receiving end of this sort of garbage speak up, maybe they'll stop doing it. And maybe they'll have to speak in sentences like the rest of us do, as opposed to just relying on staring at people to intimidate them. So I'll keep putting up my videos about what happened to me when I was going through the court system, and I'll keep telling you my story in videos to come.